You people don't belong here, Brandon snarled, his palm cracking across Dorothy's weathered cheek. The 65-year-old woman's head snapped sideways. Her glasses flew off, skittering across the polished floor. Blood trickled from her split lip. Brandon Clark, store manager, loomed over her trembling frame, his face twisted with disgust. Security! Drag this trash out before she steals something. Dorothy Williams steadied herself against a display case, her gray cardigan torn at the shoulder. Customers gasped. Phones appeared instantly. Going live, whispered a teenager, finger hovering over TikTok. Dorothy's worn purse gaped open from the assault. A first-class boarding pass peeked out beside a platinum corporate card. She touched her bleeding mouth, eyes scanning the horrified crowd with unsettling calm. These real-life stories plague America daily. Black stories like Dorothy's expose the ugly truth lurking in our communities. Have you ever watched someone get brutalized, only to discover their attacker had just made the biggest mistake of their life? 20 minutes earlier, Dorothy had entered Premier Retail with a simple mission: find a birthday gift for her granddaughter, Lily's 16th birthday. The massive electronics store buzzed with Saturday afternoon shoppers. Dorothy moved slowly through the aisles, her sensible shoes silent on the gleaming floors. Her modest appearance, thrift store cardigan, well-worn handbag, no jewelry except a simple wedding band, immediately drew suspicious glances from staff. Brandon Clark noticed her first. The 38-year-old store manager had climbed his way up from sales associate through sheer aggression and company politics. His eyes tracked Dorothy's movement through the smartphone section like a predator stalking prey. "Rachel," he whispered to his assistant manager, "keep an eye on the old lady by the iPhones." Something's off about her. Rachel Davis nodded eagerly. At 26, she worshipped Brandon's aggressive management style. "Want me to follow her?" "Just watch. These people always try something." Dorothy examined the latest smartphones, searching for something appropriate for a teenager. The prices shocked her. When had phones become so expensive? She picked up a rose gold iPhone, testing its weight. "Excuse me, ma'am." Brandon appeared beside her with practiced intimidation. "Those devices are very expensive. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in our accessories section?" Dorothy looked up calmly. "I'm shopping for my granddaughter's birthday." "This model seems suitable." "Right." Brandon's tone dripped disbelief. "And you understand that's a $1,000 phone?" "I'm aware of the price." Something in Dorothy's composed response irritated Brandon further. Most customers either got defensive or walked away when challenged. This woman's quiet confidence felt threatening. Dorothy continued shopping, adding wireless earbuds and a protective case to her mental list. Brandon shadowed her movements, whispering to staff members who began circling like sharks. At the self-checkout station, Dorothy scanned her items methodically. The total reached $1,247.83. She reached for her credit card, a simple black Visa with no flashy design. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification." Brandon materialized beside the scanner. "For what purpose?" "Standard procedure for high-value purchases." Dorothy handed over her driver's license. Brandon studied it with theatrical suspicion, comparing her face to the photo multiple times. "Dorothy Williams," he read aloud. "This address. What's your relationship to the card holder?" "I am the card holder." "Uh-huh." Brandon held up the card, examining it under the fluorescent lights. "This seems unusual. Are you certain this card belongs to you?" A small crowd began forming. Other customers slowed their shopping to watch the developing drama. Dorothy remained perfectly calm, but her dark eyes sharpened with intelligence. "Young man, I've been shopping here longer than you've been working retail." "Process my purchase." The word young stung Brandon's ego. Who was this nobody to condescend to him? In his store? Actually, I think we need to verify this transaction with your bank. Rachel, call fraud prevention. That's unnecessary, Dorothy said quietly. I decide what's necessary here. Brandon's voice rose enough for nearby customers to hear clearly. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside while we sort this out. Sort what out? Your payment method, and frankly, your attitude. The crowd grew larger. Several customers pulled out phones, sensing drama. A 17-year-old named Marcus started a TikTok live stream, angling his camera to capture the confrontation. Live from Premier Retail, he whispered to his phone. Manager's giving this lady major problems. Dorothy noticed the phones but showed no concern. Instead, she opened her worn leather purse wider, revealing its contents. Brandon glimpsed something that made him pause. A first-class airline ticket and what looked like a corporate card, but dismissed them as probably stolen. Ma'am, I think you should leave before we involve security. I haven't done anything wrong. Your kind always says that. The words slipped out before Brandon could stop them. The crowd gasped. Marcus's live stream viewer count jumped from 12 to 300 in seconds. Excuse me? Dorothy's voice remained steady, but something dangerous flickered in her expression. I said what I said. People like you come in here, cause trouble, try to use questionable payment methods. Brandon was digging himself deeper but couldn't stop. This is a respectable establishment. Define people like me. Brandon realized his mistake, but pride prevented retreat. You know exactly what I mean. The teenager's live stream exploded. Comments flooded in. Racist manager alert. Get his name. Call the news. Dorothy stood perfectly still as Brandon continued his tirade. She seemed to be calculating something, her fingers absently touching items in her purse. Tony! Brandon shouted to the security guard. I need this woman removed from the premises. Tony Anderson, a 40-year-old former police officer, approached reluctantly. Something about Dorothy's composure made him hesitate. She didn't look like a troublemaker. What seems to be the problem? Tony asked carefully. Attempted fraud, suspicious behavior, refusing to cooperate. Dorothy finally spoke. Officer Anderson, I'm simply trying to purchase a birthday gift for my granddaughter. Tony noticed she'd read his name tag and used his former title respectfully. Ma'am, if you could just... She's lying, Brandon interrupted. Look at her. Does she look like someone who can afford a $1,000 phone? The racist implication hung in the air like poison gas. The livestream viewer count hit 3,000. Comments demanded justice. Dorothy smiled for the first time, a small, knowing expression that should have warned Brandon he'd made a terrible mistake. The situation exploded across multiple fronts simultaneously. Rachel Davis arrived at a near sprint, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She'd been monitoring the store's social media alerts when notifications started flooding in about a racist incident in progress. What's happening here? Rachel demanded, then immediately locked eyes with Brandon. Her loyalty was absolute, whatever he said. She'd support. This woman, Brandon gestured dismissively at Dorothy, is trying to commit credit card fraud. When I questioned her, she became belligerent and started making accusations. Rachel nodded without hesitation. She's obviously trying to scam us. Look at her. Does she seem like our typical customer demographic? The crowd surrounding them had swelled to nearly 40 people. Marcus's TikTok live stream was pulling in viewers exponentially 5,000, then 8,000, then 12,000. Other customers had started their own streams and recordings. This is insane, whispered a mother pushing a stroller. They're profiling her right in front of everyone. Someone should call corporate, muttered an elderly man with obvious disgust. Tony Anderson shifted uncomfortably between Dorothy and the managers. His police training screamed that something was wrong with this picture, but he couldn't pinpoint what. The woman seemed completely unruffled by the chaos swirling around her. "Ma'am," Tony said gently, "maybe we could just call your bank to verify." "No." Brandon cut him off aggressively. "I'm calling the real police." This has gone far enough. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911 with theatrical flourish, speaking loudly enough for the cameras to capture every word. "Yes, I need officers at Premier Retail, 2847 Commerce Drive. We have a suspected shoplifter who's become hostile and is refusing to cooperate. Possible credit card fraud in progress." The crowd erupted in angry murmurs. Several people started shouting, "She hasn't stolen anything! This is discrimination! Get his name! Get his badge number!" Marcus angled his phone to capture the crowd's reaction. "Y'all, this is getting crazy. 15,000 people watching this mess go down live." Dorothy remained in the eye of the storm, perfectly calm. She hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't made any threatening gestures. She simply stood there, occasionally glancing at her modest wristwatch as if she had somewhere important to be. "Brandon," Rachel whispered urgently, "the live stream count is going viral. Maybe we should—" "I'm handling this," Brandon snapped. His face was flushed red with adrenaline and anger. He'd committed too far to back down now. "This woman thinks she can come into my store and cause problems. Not happening." The store's automatic doors slid open as 3 police officers entered. The crowd parted reluctantly, phones still recording every angle. Officer Jennifer Martinez took the lead, her experienced eyes quickly scanning the scene. She'd responded to retail disputes before, but the presence of cameras and the obvious tension made her cautious. "What seems to be the problem here?" Brandon jumped forward eagerly. "Officers, thank you for coming." This woman attempted to use what I believe is a stolen credit card for a high-value purchase. When we questioned her, she became argumentative and refused to provide proper identification. "That's a lie," called out a customer from the crowd. "We saw the whole thing." "He's been harassing her for 20 minutes, shouted another voice. Officer Martinez raised her hand for silence. "Ma'am," she addressed Dorothy directly, "I need to hear your side of this." Dorothy's response was measured and professional. "Officer, I came here to purchase a birthday gift for my granddaughter. I selected items totaling $1,247.83 and attempted to pay with my personal credit card. Mr. Clark began questioning my right to make this purchase based on my appearance." "She's lying," Brandon interjected. "Look at her. Does she look like someone who belongs in our store?" The racist implication landed like a bomb. Officer Martinez's expression hardened. She'd heard this kind of talk before, and it never ended well. Marcus's live stream exploded with comments. "Did he just say that on camera? Screenshot everything. Premier Retail is about to get sued. Boycott Premier Retail." The viewer count hit 25,000 and climbing. "Sir," Officer Martinez addressed Brandon with deliberate formality, "are you alleging that this woman committed a specific crime?" "Credit card fraud, obviously." "Did you see her steal a credit card?" "Well, no, but..." "Did she attempt to leave the store without paying?" "She was trying to use a fake card. Did you verify with the bank that the card was fraudulent?" Brandon's confidence wavered slightly. We were in the process of..." "So, you have no evidence of any crime being committed?" The crowd sensed the shift in momentum. Dorothy remained perfectly still, but something in her posture suggested she was preparing for action. Officer Martinez turned back to Dorothy. "Ma'am, do you have identification and the credit card in question?" "Of course." Dorothy reached into her worn purse with deliberate slowness. As she did, several items became visible to the crowd and cameras. The first-class airline ticket Brandon had dismissed, a platinum corporate card that caught the light, and something else, a small leather wallet that looked distinctly official. "Here's my driver's license," Dorothy said, handing it over. "And the credit card they're questioning." Officer Martinez examined both documents. Her eyebrows rose slightly. The address on the license was in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. "Ma'am, this appears to be in order. Your card?" Dorothy handed over what appeared to be a standard black visa. But Officer Martinez, trained to notice details, saw something that made her look twice. Brandon leaned forward aggressively. "See? I told you something was suspicious about—" "Mr. Clark," Officer Martinez interrupted sharply, "I need you to step back." The authority in her voice cut through Brandon's bluster. For the first time, doubt crept into his expression. Dorothy glanced at her watch again. "Officers, I appreciate your professionalism, but I do have an appointment I need to keep." Something about the way she said appointment sent a chill through the air. It wasn't a request. It was a statement from someone accustomed to having their schedule respected. The live stream comments went wild. "She's too calm. Something's about to happen. Plot twist incoming." Marcus whispered to his phone, 28,000 viewers. This lady's got some kind of secret, I can feel it. Dorothy's fingers moved to her phone with the confidence of someone about to make a very important call. Brandon still didn't understand what was coming. Dorothy's fingers moved with practiced precision as she scrolled through her phone contacts. The crowd pressed closer, sensing something momentous was about to unfold. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez said cautiously, "if you need to make a call—" "Just one moment," Dorothy replied with calm authority that made everyone pause. She found the number she was looking for and pressed dial. The phone rang once before connecting. "Premier Retail Corporation, Board of Directors emergency line. This is Janet speaking." Dorothy's voice carried clearly across the silent store. "This is Dorothy Williams, Board Chair Emeritus. Authorization code Alpha 791. I need an immediate corporate intervention at store location 2-8-4-7. The gasp from the phone was audible to everyone nearby. "Miss Williams." "Yes, ma'am, immediately. What's your situation?" "Discrimination incident in progress. Full documentation required. Priority 1 response." "Understood. Activating emergency protocols now." Brandon's face went white. Rachel grabbed his arm, confusion flooding her features. The name Williams meant nothing to them, but the formal language and obvious deference from corporate headquarters sent ice through their veins. "What's happening?" Rachel whispered frantically. Within 30 seconds, every manager's phone in the store began ringing simultaneously. The electronic symphony of alerts created chaos as employees scrambled to answer identical emergency calls. Brandon's hands trembled as he accepted the call. "Hello? This is Corporate Emergency Response. Cease all operations immediately. Board chair on premises. Await instruction. Do not engage further with the customer. Confirm receipt." What? Board chair? But confirm receipt now. "Confirmed," Brandon whispered, his voice barely audible. Rachel's phone delivered the same message. Tony's radio crackled with security alerts. Even part-time employees received urgent texts. The crowd watched in fascination as the store's entire management structure received identical instructions. Marcus's live stream viewer count exploded past 45,000. "Holy shit," Marcus whispered to his camera. "Something major is going down." Dorothy calmly returned her phone to her purse, then reached for the small leather wallet that had caught Officer Martinez's attention earlier. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," Dorothy said quietly. She opened the wallet, revealing not a driver's license holder, but an official corporate identification badge. The Premier Retail logo gleamed under the fluorescent lights, but this wasn't an employee badge. It was platinum-colored with distinctive gold trim. Engraved across the bottom in elegant script, Board of Directors, Chair Emeritus. The photo showed a younger Dorothy in professional attire, but the signature was unmistakable. Dorothy Williams, with the founder's personal seal beneath it. "My name is Dorothy Williams," she announced to the stunned crowd. "I served as Chief Executive Officer of Premier Retail Corporation for 12 years before my retirement 24 months ago. I currently chair the board's Diversity and Inclusion Oversight Committee. The store fell into absolute silence except for the distant hum of electronics and the frantic typing of live stream comments exploding across dozens of phones. Brandon's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The blood drained from his face so completely that Officer Martinez stepped closer, concerned he might collapse. Rachel's hands flew to her mouth in horror. "Oh my God! Oh my God, Brandon, do you know what we've done?" The crowd erupted in whispers and gasps. Phones pivoted to capture Brandon's reaction. Someone shouted, "He's fired!" And nervous laughter rippled through the audience. Marcus could barely contain his excitement. 55,000 viewers! This is the craziest plot twist ever! The CEO was here the whole time! But Dorothy wasn't finished. She reached back into her purse and withdrew one more item, a second corporate card. This one clearly different from her personal visa. "This," she held up the card for everyone to see, "is my corporate account. It has no spending limit and draws directly from company funds for authorized purchases." She paused, letting that information sink in. "The personal credit card I attempted to use, the one Mr. Clark deemed suspicious, is linked to an account containing approximately $2.3 million. I use it for everyday purchases to avoid the paperwork required for corporate expenses." The mathematical reality hit everyone simultaneously. Dorothy Williams wasn't just rich. She was premier retail royalty who had been shopping incognito in her own store. Officer Martinez found her voice first. "Ma'am, I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding here." "Yes," Dorothy agreed with understated authority. "There has been." Brandon finally managed to speak, his voice cracking like a teenager's. I didn't know. Your appearance. I mean..." "My appearance," Dorothy repeated softly, "led you to assume I was a criminal. My age and race overrode any possibility in your mind that I might be a legitimate customer. Is that correct?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Brandon knew that anything he said would be recorded, broadcast, and probably used in legal proceedings. We follow procedures." "Whose procedures authorize physical assault, Mr. Clark?" The word assault landed like a bomb. Everyone's eyes shifted to Dorothy's still swollen cheek and the dried blood at the corner of her mouth. Rachel began crying quietly. Tony Anderson stepped further away from Brandon, clearly wanting no part of whatever was coming next. The live stream comments were moving too fast to read. "Justice incoming. CEO revenge. He's so fired. Lawsuit time." Dorothy glanced at her watch once more. "Mr. Clark, in approximately 90 seconds, someone very important is going to walk through those doors. I suggest you prepare yourself." As if summoned by her words, the sound of helicopter rotors began growing louder outside. Brandon looked around desperately, but there was nowhere to run. He was surrounded by cameras, witnesses, police officers, and the woman whose face he had slapped. The woman who owned the company. The helicopter rotors grew deafening as a sleek corporate aircraft descended into Premier Retail's parking lot. Through the massive windows, the crowd watched a woman in an expensive suit sprint across the asphalt, flanked by 2 security personnel and what appeared to be a legal team. Sarah Johnson, Regional Vice President for the Western Division, burst through the automatic doors at exactly 3:47 p.m. Her normally perfect blonde hair was disheveled from the emergency flight, and her face showed the pale panic of someone whose career was about to implode. "Miss Williams," Sarah called across the store, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. The crowd parted automatically as Sarah approached, her entourage creating a buffer zone around Dorothy. The live stream viewer count hit 78,000 as viewers shared the stream across social media platforms. "Sarah," Dorothy acknowledged with the same calm tone she'd maintained throughout the entire ordeal. "Thank you for responding so quickly." "Ma'am, I cannot begin to express how sorry—" Dorothy raised one hand slightly, and Sarah immediately fell silent. The gesture was subtle but carried absolute authority. Before we discuss apologies, Dorothy said, addressing both Sarah and the cameras capturing every word, let me provide some context for our viewers. She turned to face Marcus's live stream directly, speaking as if addressing a board meeting. Premier Retail Corporation generated $24.7 billion in revenue last fiscal year. 63% of our customer base consists of minority communities who trust us with their hard-earned money. This single store location processes approximately $2.1 million in monthly revenue, with 47% of that coming from customers who look exactly like me. The precision of her data delivery was chilling. Brandon stood frozen as Dorothy continued her corporate presentation. Mr. Clark, Dorothy addressed him directly, as a store manager, you should be familiar with Employee Handbook Section 4.3, our zero-tolerance discrimination policy. Can you recite it for us? Brandon's mouth moved, but no sound emerged. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the store's air conditioning. Allow me to refresh your memory, Dorothy continued. Section 4.3.1 states, any employee who discriminates against customers based on race, age, appearance, or perceived economic status will face immediate termination. Section 4.3.2 adds, physical contact or assault of any customer constitutes grounds for criminal charges in addition to termination. She paused, letting the legal language sink in. Section 4.3.7, which you apparently missed during training, specifically prohibits managers from questioning customers' payment methods without probable cause. Probable cause is defined as witnessing actual suspicious behavior, not making assumptions based on personal prejudices. Sarah Johnson's legal team was frantically taking notes. One attorney whispered urgently into his phone, likely alerting the corporate legal department about potential liability exposure. Dorothy reached into her purse and withdrew a small digital recorder. I've been documenting this incident since it began 26 minutes ago. Every word, every action, every violation of company policy has been preserved for review. She pressed play. Brandon's voice filled the air. You people don't belong here. Your kind always causes trouble. Look at her. Does she look like someone who belongs in our store? The racist statements, now played back in the corporate presence of Sarah Johnson and live-streamed to nearly 90,000 viewers, carried devastating legal weight. Furthermore, Dorothy continued, I have security footage from 17 different angles documenting the assault Mr. Clark committed against me. She turned to Sarah. Our corporate legal team will find this particularly interesting given that Mr. Clark struck a sitting board member on company property while she was attempting to conduct legitimate business. Sarah's face went ashen. Ms. Williams, we will take immediate action. I haven't finished, Dorothy interrupted smoothly. The legal ramifications extend beyond employment termination. Premier Retail Corporation could face federal discrimination charges, civil rights violations, and assault liability. Our stock price has already dropped 2.3% since this live stream began trending. Marcus whispered to his camera, she's got real-time stock information. This lady is next level. Dorothy addressed the cameras again. For our viewing audience, you're witnessing a case study in corporate accountability. What happens next will determine whether Premier Retail deserves your continued trust and business. She turned back to Sarah with boardroom authority. Ms. Johnson, I'm invoking Emergency Protocol 7 under our crisis management procedures. You have 30 seconds to demonstrate our company's commitment to justice, or I will recommend the board initiate a comprehensive investigation into this division's management practices. The ultimatum hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah looked desperately at Brandon, then at Rachel, then at the legal team for guidance. Brandon Clark, Employee ID 4-7-3-9, Dorothy continued with mechanical precision, you are terminated effective immediately for violations of corporate policies, 4.3.1 through 4.3.7. Your access is revoked. Security will escort you from the premises. Brandon finally found his voice. You can't. I have rights. This is unfair. Mr. Clark. Dorothy's tone remained perfectly level. You slapped a customer in front of 93,000 witnesses. You made racist statements that were recorded and broadcast internationally. You violated 7 separate company policies. The only unfair thing here is that you're not being arrested. She nodded to Sarah. Ms. Johnson, please execute the termination. Sarah's hands shook as she pulled out her corporate phone. Brandon Clark, you are hereby terminated from Premier Retail Corporation. Please surrender your access badge, keys, and any company property immediately. The crowd watched in fascination as Brandon's corporate access cards were collected. His phone buzzed with automated messages confirming his termination and benefit cancellation. Rachel Davis, Dorothy continued, you are suspended pending full investigation. You will undergo mandatory bias training and sensitivity counseling. Your employment status will be reviewed in 30 days. Rachel nodded frantically through her tears. Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have. Tony Anderson, Dorothy addressed the security guard. You will complete unconscious bias training within 7 days. Your supervisor will monitor your performance closely. Tony nodded respectfully. Unlike the managers, he'd maintained professionalism throughout the incident. Dorothy turned back to the cameras for her final corporate announcement. Effective immediately, Premier Retail will implement 5 systematic reforms. First, our real-time bias monitoring system will be operational within 72 hours, allowing customers to report discrimination directly to corporate headquarters via smartphone app. The legal team was recording everything for immediate implementation. Second, monthly bias audits will be conducted by mystery shoppers from diverse backgrounds. Third, all discrimination complaints will reach board level within 4 hours. Fourth, community advisory boards will oversee our diversity initiatives. Fifth, quarterly transparency reports will be published documenting all discrimination incidents and our responses. She paused, ensuring the cameras captured her final statement. This incident represents a failure of leadership, training, and basic human decency. But it also demonstrates that systemic change is possible when we demand accountability. Brandon was escorted toward the exit by security, his career and reputation destroyed in less than an hour. The crowd watched his departure with a mixture of satisfaction and sobering awareness. Dorothy had just demonstrated the power of quiet dignity combined with systematic corporate accountability. The real lesson was about to begin. Brandon's termination was processed with mechanical efficiency that demonstrated Premier Retail's corporate machine in full operation. His access cards beeped once as security deactivated them, the sound marking the end of his retail career. Mr. Clark, Sarah Johnson announced formally for the cameras, your final paycheck will be processed according to state labor laws. Your health insurance terminates at midnight tonight. Security will escort you to collect any personal items from your office. The crowd watched in silence as Brandon walked the gauntlet of phones recording his humiliation. His face had progressed from confusion to rage to a hollow acceptance of his destroyed future. At the store's entrance, he turned back once, searching for something to say that might salvage his dignity. Dorothy met his gaze steadily. Her swollen cheek and bloodied lip served as permanent reminders of his assault, captured in dozens of recordings that would follow him forever. Brandon said nothing. The automatic doors closed behind him with finality. The police officers remained to complete their incident report. Officer Martinez approached Dorothy with professional respect, tinged by obvious admiration. Ma'am, do you wish to press assault charges? We have multiple witnesses and video evidence. Dorothy considered the question carefully. Officer, Mr. Clark's termination and public humiliation serve justice adequately. Criminal charges would only prolong this incident and distract from the systemic changes we need to implement. The answer surprised many viewers, but demonstrated Dorothy's strategic thinking. She was playing a longer game than simple revenge. However, she continued, I want a complete police report filed. This documentation may prove valuable for our corporate policy reforms. Sarah Johnson stepped forward nervously. Ms. Williams, on behalf of Premier Retail Corporation, I offer our most sincere apologies for this inexcusable incident. We take full responsibility for our employees' actions. Dorothy's response was measured and corporate precise. Ms. Johnson, apologies are meaningless without structural change. What matters now is implementation. She addressed the live stream audience directly, speaking with the authority of someone who had commanded billion-dollar decisions. For our 97,000 viewers currently watching, you're about to witness how corporate accountability actually works when executed properly. Sarah retrieved a tablet from her legal team and began reading from prepared emergency protocols. Premier Retail Corporation announces the immediate implementation of the Dorothy Williams Accountability Framework, Sarah began, her voice carrying across the store. Named in honor of our board chair emeritus who experienced this discrimination firsthand. The crowd murmured appreciation for the naming tribute. Dorothy nodded acknowledgement but maintained her professional demeanor. Component 1. The real-time response application will launch within 72 hours. Any customer experiencing discrimination can immediately alert corporate headquarters with GPS location, photographic evidence, and live streaming capability. Marcus whispered to his camera, "They're building an app to stop racism in real time. That's actually genius." Component 2, Sarah continued, mystery shopper bias audits will begin Monday. We're hiring diverse community members to test every Premier retail location monthly. Results will be published publicly on our website. The transparency aspect drew approving comments from the live stream audience. Dorothy had designed accountability that couldn't be hidden or manipulated. Component 3. Executive Response Protocol requires all discrimination complaints to reach board level within 4 hours. No manager can suppress or dismiss these reports. Component 4. Community advisory boards comprising local civil rights leaders will oversee our diversity initiatives. They have authority to recommend store closures for persistent violations. The power structure reversal was revolutionary. Community members would now have direct influence over corporate operations. Component 5. Quarterly transparency reports will document every discrimination incident, our response time, and resolution outcomes. These reports will be publicly accessible and independently audited. Dorothy added her own commentary. These aren't feel-good gestures or public relations theater. These are binding corporate policies with measurable outcomes and public accountability. She turned to the cameras again. The mystery shoppers will be paid $500 per audit. The community advisory boards will receive annual budgets of $50,000 per district. The real-time response team will operate 24/7 with guaranteed response times under 15 minutes. The specific financial commitments demonstrated serious corporate investment in change. Comments flooded the live stream praising the concrete nature of the reforms. Rachel Davis, still suspended but present, raised her hand tentatively. "Ms. Williams, what happens to employees who want to improve but made mistakes?" Dorothy's response showed unexpected compassion. "Ms. Davis, you followed Mr. Clark's lead rather than thinking independently. That shows poor judgment but not necessarily irredeemable character. Your 30-day suspension includes comprehensive bias training, community service with local civil rights organizations, and mentorship with our diversity specialists." She paused thoughtfully. "If you demonstrate genuine growth and commitment to change, you'll be eligible for reinstatement with probationary status. Second chances exist, but only for those willing to do the work." The balanced approach between accountability and redemption resonated with viewers who appreciated both justice and forgiveness. Tony Anderson stepped forward. "Ma'am, I should have intervened sooner. I let my respect for authority override my moral judgment." "Mr. Anderson, your honest self-reflection demonstrates wisdom. You'll complete bias training and serve as a liaison between security and our new community advisory board. Your experience in law enforcement, combined with proper training, could make you valuable in preventing future incidents." The transformation of potential adversaries into allies showed Dorothy's sophisticated understanding of sustainable change. Sarah Johnson received a phone call and stepped aside briefly before returning with visible relief. Ms. Williams, corporate headquarters has approved the complete Dorothy Williams accountability framework. Full funding authorization has been granted. Implementation begins immediately. The live stream exploded with celebration comments. Viewers had witnessed not just individual justice, but systemic corporate change happening in real time. Dorothy addressed the crowd one final time before the cameras. Today's incident represents both a failure and an opportunity. We failed to protect a customer from discrimination and assault, but we've also created a framework for preventing future failures. Her voice carried the weight of decades in corporate leadership. Real change requires more than good intentions. It requires systems, funding, accountability, and sustained commitment. What you've witnessed today is how transformation begins. She gestured toward the area where Brandon had stood minutes earlier. Mr. Clark's termination was necessary but insufficient. Individual punishment without systemic reform simply moves problems elsewhere. The educational aspect of her response elevated the entire incident from viral spectacle to meaningful social commentary. The true test of these reforms will come in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years from now. Will Premier Retail maintain this commitment when cameras aren't rolling and social media has moved on to other stories? She smiled slightly, the first genuine emotion she'd shown during the entire ordeal. I'll be watching. Our community partners will be watching. And now, thanks to today's documentation, the world will be watching. The live stream reached 112,000 concurrent viewers as Dorothy's transformation of personal injustice into corporate reform reached its conclusion. Justice had been served, but more importantly, systems had been changed. 6 months later, Dorothy Williams stood in the same Premier Retail store, but everything had changed. The real-time response application had prevented 847 potential discrimination incidents across the chain's 2,300 locations. Mystery shoppers had completed 1,200 bias audits, resulting in additional training for 340 employees and termination of 23 managers who failed to meet diversity standards. Dorothy held her granddaughter Lily's hand as they walked through the electronics section. The 16-year-old carried the rose-gold iPhone Dorothy had originally tried to purchase a birthday gift that had sparked a revolution. "Grandma, is that the spot where it happened?" Lily asked, pointing to the self-checkout area. "Right there," Dorothy confirmed, "where ignorance met accountability." The store's walls now displayed diversity commitment posters featuring real employees from various backgrounds. QR codes linked to the transparency reports Dorothy had mandated, showing monthly discrimination statistics and resolution outcomes. A young manager approached them respectfully. "Miss Williams? I'm James Thompson, the new store manager. I wanted to personally thank you for the changes you've implemented." James was 28, college-educated, and had completed the enhanced bias training program that was now mandatory for all management positions. His diverse staff reflected the community they served. "Mr. Thompson, how has the real-time response system affected daily operations?" "Honestly, it's made everyone more mindful. Knowing that any customer can instantly connect to corporate headquarters keeps us all accountable. But more importantly, it's created a culture where we actually look forward to serving everyone." Lily smiled at the exchange. At 16, she understood the historical significance of her grandmother's quiet revolution. Dorothy's phone buzzed with a news alert. Premier Retail's stock had reached an all-time high, driven partly by positive publicity from their diversity initiatives. The Dorothy Williams Accountability Framework had become a case study taught in business schools nationwide. "Grandma," Lily said as they continued shopping, "do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't been the CEO? If you'd just been a regular customer?" Dorothy considered the question seriously. "Sweetheart, that's exactly why these systems matter. Every person deserves dignity regardless of their position or power. The real victory isn't that I could fight back, it's that we've created tools for people who can't." They passed the customer service desk where a large monitor displayed real-time statistics. 47 days since last discrimination incident. Customer satisfaction rating, 94%. Community trust index, 89%. The numbers told a story of genuine transformation, not just public relations theater. As they prepared to leave, Dorothy reflected on the broader impact of that March afternoon. The viral video had been shared 3.2 million times across social platforms. It sparked congressional hearings about retail discrimination and influenced federal legislation requiring bias reporting in businesses over certain sizes. Brandon Clark had struggled to find employment after his termination went viral. Eventually, he enrolled in a diversity counseling program and now worked as a case study speaker for bias training seminars, sharing his story as a cautionary tale. Rachel Davis had completed her suspension successfully, returned to Premier Retail, and was promoted to Diversity Compliance Officer. Her transformation from complicit bystander to active ally demonstrated the possibility of genuine personal growth. Tony Anderson had become the head of security operations and served on the Community Advisory Board, bridging law enforcement experience with social justice advocacy. But the most meaningful change was systemic. 17 major retail chains had adopted similar accountability frameworks after witnessing Premier Retail's success. The Dorothy Williams effect had spread throughout American retail, creating measurable improvements in customer treatment nationwide. Outside the store, Dorothy and Lily encountered Marcus, the teenager whose live stream had captured everything. Now 17 and heading to college on a journalism scholarship, he approached them with obvious respect. "Miss Williams, I wanted to thank you again. That live stream changed my whole perspective on social justice and corporate responsibility. Marcus, your decision to document that incident was crucial. Witnesses like you make accountability possible." He grinned. "I still can't believe I had 112,000 people watching when you revealed you were the CEO. That was the plot twist of the century." As they walked to Dorothy's car, Lily asked, "What's next, Grandma? What other changes do you want to make?" Dorothy smiled, her mind already working on expanding the accountability framework to other industries. Education, healthcare, housing discrimination exists everywhere. Power imbalances allow it to flourish. We've proven that systematic change is possible when we demand it. She paused at her car, looking back at the Premier Retail store where her personal humiliation had become a catalyst for widespread reform. But the most important lesson isn't about corporate policy or viral videos, sweetheart. It's about quiet dignity defeating loud prejudice. Sometimes the most powerful response to injustice isn't anger or revenge, it's strategic action that creates lasting change. Lily nodded thoughtfully. Like how you didn't scream or fight back. You just systematically destroyed everything wrong with how they treated people. Exactly. Real power isn't about dominance, it's about transformation. As they drove away, Dorothy reflected on the touching stories of people who had contacted her after the incident. Elderly customers who felt more confident shopping, young people who understood their rights, employees who had been empowered to report discrimination without fear. These real-life stories mattered because they represented dignity restored and systems improved. The Black stories like hers weren't just about individual justice. They were about collective progress toward a more equitable society. The framework she'd created would outlast her own involvement, protecting future customers who might face similar discrimination. That legacy meant more than any corporate title or financial success she'd achieved. 6 months after a store manager's slap sparked a revolution, Dorothy Williams had proven that quiet strength, strategic thinking, and systematic change could defeat prejudice more effectively than any other response. The real victory wasn't personal vindication. It was institutional transformation that would protect countless others. Your turn to create change. Have you witnessed discrimination in retail stores? Share your experiences in the comments below. When we document these incidents, we create accountability. When we demand better treatment, companies respond. Subscribe to hear more life stories that inspire systematic change. Like this video to support justice and dignity for all customers. Share it to spread awareness about how individual courage can spark widespread reform. Together, we transform real-life stories of discrimination into catalysts for lasting social progress. Your voice matters. Your witness matters. Your action matters. Dorothy Williams proved that touching stories of resilience create the foundation for meaningful change. What story will you help tell?